This is the Forge Ministry Podcast. The Forge Ministry began in 2022 with the purpose and burden of shaping, strengthening, and sharpening men for the ministry. Welcome to the Forge.
Hello, friends, and thank you for listening to another episode of the Forge Ministry Podcast. My name is Brother Aaron, and today I've got an exciting interview that I think will be a blessing and a help to you. This interview was conducted just a couple of weeks ago with Missionary Blake Muscott in Guyana, South America. I was down there on a missions trip and had a chance to sit down with Brother Blake, who's a friend of mine, and talk to him a little bit about mentorship, both on the field there and those who've invested in his own life. So I trust that this will be a blessing to you. If you have questions or would like more information about the Forge Ministry, please head on over to forgeministry.com. That's forgeministry.com, and you should be able to find some information there. And I trust that this interview will be a help and a blessing to you, and we look forward to seeing you again on the next episode. God bless you.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Forge Ministry Podcast. And this is kind of a unique setting where I'm at today, and the guest is unique, and I am sitting in the dungeon of Missionary Blake Muscott here in Guyana, South America. We're sitting in his office that does somewhat resemble a dungeon, and it's pretty cool. But we wanted to talk a little bit about ministry and about mentorship. And Brother Blake is the pastor and leader of this work here in Guyana, and pastors Lighthouse Baptist Church in Port Kaituma, which is, by my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of the northern, remote, more primitive region of Guyana.
Northernmost region, for sure.
And so he's been here for permanently just a few months, and has made many trips here over the years, and God really burdened his heart for Guyana, and him and his wife Haley and their children are here, and God has really just put his hand upon Brother Blake's life and given him such a great opportunity to serve here. And seeing as now I am here in, I was going to say sunny Guyana, but it
hasn't been sunny.
It hasn't been sunny. It's the dry season, and it has rained every day. But we wanted to talk with Brother Blake just a little bit about mentorship and about maybe some of the influences that God used in his life to bring him here, how he got here, and then looking towards the future and mentoring men in Guyana here. So, Brother Blake, thanks for taking a little bit of time chatting with me. I certainly appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me here. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. So, let me ask you this: when it comes to ministry, Paul told Timothy, "Continue thou in the things that thou hast learned and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them." When you look back at your kind of ministerial life thus far, what mentors did you have, or people have been influential in your life that God has used to kind of shape and to steer you towards missions, maybe towards Guyana specifically, and has kind of brought you to this point? Can you talk a little bit about just the men and the influences that have kind of brought you here?
Yes, absolutely. There's like a whole list of men and even women in my life that God has used. And I think God uses different people for different seasons. So first one would be my grandfather. He, Pastor Bill Ogle, he was a hippie and was literally about to kill himself. And he was driving home from work and told God, he'd been wrestling with his salvation for a long time. He was not raised in a Christian home or anything, but somebody had been witnessing to him for several weeks on the job. And he said, "I'm either going to kill myself or you're going to have to step in and just show yourself to me." And so on the way home in Wyoming, between where he was working and where he was living at the time, he pulled this little red pickup truck off the side of the road and got saved. And so life drastically changed. His wife was not saved. He was from far south. She was from New York, and they were totally different. And it irked her that his life had totally changed and made her look bad. So anyway, she eventually got saved, and then so they moved back to their hometown in Florida, and he eventually started a church, started pastoring. And so long story short, I grew up in my grandfather's church, and thank the Lord for that. So that's like the earliest influence and the earliest mentor that I had was my grandfather. But then I had men in my life, like there was Pastor Joel Logan and Pastor Brent Logan. They were doing getting a work started in Greece, and personally like invited me with them to come with them. So Brent Logan and his family were living in Greece to help host teams that would come. Pastor Joel Logan had already had a team from his church go, but he was going to bring his personal family to visit his brother and his family. So this was like a family trip. And so I'm in a small church. There's no one in this church going to go on this project, and I really wanted to go. And so a pastor called a couple of other pastors, and Joel Logan said, "Oh yeah, let him come with us." Well, not a lot of people would be willing to do that, seeing that it was his personal family trip. And so this pastor let me come with him. And that's the example of Christ. Come with me, come and see. And that was my very first mission trip, Thessalonica, Greece. There's still a church there today because of that trip. And that just planted something deep in my heart. And I don't even know if Pastor Joel Logan or Brent Logan even knows the level of investment they made in my life. To this day, I don't think they have any idea what that meant to me, but it meant a great deal to me, and it really formulated a lot of who I am today.
That is pretty special that they would invite you to go to that, and that was your first experience there was with two just incredibly high quality men of God.
Well, so I wasn't sitting through a Bible college class. I'm sitting in their living room watching them interact with each other's families and playing Mario Kart with their kids while they're talking Bible and just talking about the ministry and the work of the Lord. And they loved it. They weren't complaining. They weren't griping. They were just so excited to serve the Lord. And that rubbed off on me while I was playing Mario Kart.
The joy of ministry.
The joy of ministry. Yeah. And then after that, I went to Bible college in DeLand, Florida at the Bible Baptist Church, which is also now our sending church and our home church. And so Pastor David Brown, who is the co-pastor of the Bible Baptist Church, he has been youth pastoring there for almost 20 years now. And personally, again, Paul talked about neglect not the gift that is in thee, which was given thee by the laying on of the hands of the presbytery. I think some of that is like an ordinance, like where you're ordaining somebody. But I think it's much deeper than that. When you take your hands and put them in somebody's life, there's a lot of personal investment there. Amen. And Pastor David Brown was very instrumental in that in my life.
Did he take you on a lot of missions trips and things of that nature that kind of spurred a little bit of the desire to go into missions?
David Brown took me on my second mission trip, and that trip was to a little English-speaking country in South America called Guyana. I'd never heard of it before. And on that trip, God just knit my heart to these people. This was not a teen trip. Pastor David Brown was preaching a teen conference in Guyana, and just perceived from me being in the youth group, but also in Bible college, a freshman, and he perceived that I just had a heart for missions. And so he invited me, do you want to, again, come with me? It would have been a lot easier for him to travel alone, go preach his meeting and come back. But the fact that he was willing to babysit a 19 or 18-year-old teenager on this trip, now I am the pastor of the church that he was preaching at in the middle of this jungle region in Guyana, because that decision that I'm going to ask this young man to come with me and invest into him. So that made a huge difference in my life and really shaped the course of my life today.
It's when Paul, on his missionary journeys, initially it was him and Barnabas, and they took John Mark. And we kind of know that, early on in the trip, John Mark, when they decided to move on from the island of Cyprus, he decided to go back to Jerusalem. And obviously, Paul was not fond of John Mark going on another trip with them, and the contention between Paul and Barnabas, the Bible says, was so sharp that they parted company. But at the end of Paul's ministry, you can see the value of a Barnabas, somebody who sees potential in other people and just gives them an opportunity to see if, that potential is going to blossom and turn into something for the Lord.
Yeah.
And Barnabas was consistently doing that for other people. And at the end of Paul's life and ministry, he said, take Mark and bring him because he's profitable to me for the ministry. And I do think that most young men probably need a Barnabas, someone to believe in them, someone to see the potential, someone to invite them to come and just to be part of it. And it kind of opens their eyes to how God could potentially use them in the future.
I don't know if the John Marks know that they need a mentor.
You're probably right.
There are so many young people that I think, I just wonder how much farther would they go for the Lord, or would they go anywhere for the Lord if they had someone to step outside of their own life and their own busyness and see the potential in somebody and say, hey, why don't you come with me? They might not even know their own potential. They need somebody with wisdom and discernment to be willing to reach into their lives and pull them in. And certainly that was true in my life. But then on the flip side, now after those men that I have just mentioned in my earlier years kind of like reached into my life and pulled me into places I never could even see myself, then I got a heart for it. So then I willingly and intentionally put myself around mentors that would then invest into my life. So I think this really kind of goes both directions, because there are a lot of people that are like, well, they don't ever invite me to go anywhere. They don't ever invite me to do anything. So I'm just, you're just going to sit there and do nothing? And so putting myself around people that will invest into me. And a lot of those men would if they knew you were interested. So I think mentorship kind of has, come and
it's
see.
It's a two-way street.
It is. It absolutely is. So.
Well, even the Lord, when he chose apostles, he called unto him his disciples. And then out of that group, he chose apostles. And the Bible says that they would be with him. And even then, he took them places and showed them things and said, greater, you haven't seen nothing yet, essentially. You're going to see more than just this. Mm-hmm. And even on this trip here, I, believing so strongly in the idea of mentorship, I have two young men with me. And by young, I mean very young. I have my nephew who's a teenager, and I have my oldest son who's not even a teenager yet. But I want from an early age them to develop a hunger and a desire to serve the Lord. And sometimes that does mean, like you mentioned, having someone kind of babysit over them a little bit. And they're not babies, but we understand the term, to bring them along, and it's extra care, and you have to prepare and kind of manage a little bit more intently those younger people. But I think it does develop something in them, a desire to want to be around the ministry and a desire to want to serve the Lord. And you have to have somebody who probably believes in that for you before you develop it for yourself. And we'll talk a little bit about Brother Dean Runyon just for a minute. And he was the man that God used to start this work here and faithfully serve for many years. And you got to develop a relationship with him. And really, as far as the Guyanese ministry here, he was in many ways a mentor to you, as far as kind of giving you opportunities to continue to come back and to serve, and then, turning the work over to you. So maybe talk just for a minute about him and some of his influence.
Yes. So Brother Dean Runyon came to Port Kaituma, Guyana in 1993 or 4, and started the Lighthouse Baptist Church here not long after that. Those days were still, we are 10 miles away from Jonestown, where the Jim Jones massacre happened, the People's Temple of Jonestown and all of that. And this village is where Jim Jones' posse shot and killed the senator, U.S. senator, and all of his media guys and everybody. And so the Jim Jones thing was still so fresh in the hearts of the people that they could not trust a white man, especially a white man and religion. So Dean Runyon came to this place in a time when it would be very extremely difficult to start a work. and he pushed through. The living conditions in this village at that time was just extremely difficult. Very, very limited electricity here. Most of it was all just run off a generator, and you would just run at certain times of the day, and that was it. So just everything about life here was hard, and they were just pioneers. They pushed through and started a great work here in this place. So then there was a season of his ministry where there was a church here, there's ministries here, there's activity here. And he's now thinking about, okay, well, what about the future of ministry? Not just this ministry, but ministries around the world. How can we get other young men interested and involved in missions and in ministry? So God gave him the desire to start a 30-day missions boot camp. And so he would open up this facility and this property for young men to come and live here on the mission field for 30 days. Just to see what life is like here, put their hands in the work, turn wrenches, sweep floors, paint buildings, and learn life here in the jungle. And that's something that it takes work, it takes effort to put all of that together. But it's if somebody's not willing to do that, then you're not going to have the Blake Muscotts who come and live here for 3 months and just really get a heart for the work because somebody was willing to open up their ministry to younger men.
That's a blessing. Do you have any idea how many men at some point in time have come through that and experienced the missions boot camp and spent, a month here or so? Any idea how many people he was able to?
I would guess probably between 15 and 20.
Yeah.
And it would have been a lot more if his health had allowed him to stay longer.
Sure. Yeah. Did he start that in his latter years, or was that an early on vision?
I don't know if that was an early on vision, but I don't.
And he may not have had the facilities and whatnot to actually.
Yeah, I don't know if it really came to fruition. Really, I don't really ever think that he actually saw it become what he wanted it to be. He has some dorms over here that he was starting to build. They're still unfinished, but he calls that the missions boot camp building. And so his plan was to have like groups of people come and live on the mission field. And so there's still a lot of potential there to see people actually mentored and see people see the work firsthand.
Yeah. Well, let me shift gears and we'll kind of, as we wind down, we've got plenty of time, but obviously you've spent a lot of time here in this country, and every country presents a unique challenge as to the culture and the people and hurdles that have to be overcome in order to when Paul is writing to Titus, he kind of uses some colorful language to describe the Cretans.
Yeah.
And, they're slow bellies, they're liars, they're evil beasts. And he says, and this witness is true.
Yeah.
It was not a great cultural environment to find pastors, but yet he tells him you need to ordain elders in every city.
Mm-hmm.
And so given, kind of the understanding that every country has a little bit different context in which it's working, what are some of the, I guess, potential challenges to mentoring young men? And that's really what I think we believe the biblical model is: the things that thou hast learned of me, the same commit thou to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak a little bit to some of the challenges of mentoring men, specifically young men here in Guyana, maybe things that they're dealing with that make that challenge maybe greater or at least different than it is in other places? And, maybe just a little bit of your heart for the future of mentoring men in Guyana.
Yes. Proverbs says, as in water, face answereth to face, so the heart of man to man. Anywhere you go in the world, you're going to have a lot of the same problems because we're all sinners. We're all people. But in certain locations, there are certain strongholds that Satan has for various different reasons. And I think a lot of them are just spiritual. But here in Guyana, it's just a culture where the men are, I would almost say the same thing that was said in the New Testament: evil beasts. Like lost men here are just animals. In the way that they act, in the way that they treat women, in their substance abuse. It's in some villages here, you feel like you're walking through a zombie area.
Mm.
They're just literally perpetually drunk. I say kind of jokingly, up in a village we have a little church plant we're starting there called Falstop, And we don't have a town drunk. We have a drunk town. I have, to be honest, with the exception of 2 or 3 men that come to our church, I have never met a man in that village of 300 or 400 people. I've never met a man who wasn't completely drunk. Never met a sober man once.
Wow.
And so it's just a stronghold there. So there's just so many things culturally here, where in the States, there's a lot of things you might have to deal with that you don't deal with here. But here it's just, there's apathy. There's the men literally, like, they work long enough to buy alcohol, and then they sit around and drink it until they need more. So as far as food and provision and survival, the women are responsible to take care of that. So what happens is, you bring that in context of the church. The women are the ones who clean everything. The women are the ones who invest into everything. And it really kind of turns into a matriarchal ministry, because the women have passion, the women have desire, the women really want to know the Lord. And generally speaking, the men just love themselves. And so that's a hard hurdle to work through.
And can I insert this right here? In no way, shape, or form are we trying to throw cold water on the women being involved in the work of the Lord.
Exactly.
That's something that you want. In fact, the Bible's very clear, even in the book of Philippians, about those women who labored for the fellowship of the gospel with Paul. But just because that is true, it doesn't mean that we just change what the biblical model is of ministry and church leadership because it's easier to work with women than it is with men. You want them to be involved, but you need your ministry still needs to be led by men. Male leadership and headship needs to be involved in that for it to be biblical. And so, even though it may seem like, well, we can get something going easier with this, and there were churches in the Bible that were started with women. The Church of Philippi was started with a women's group by a river. But that doesn't mean that you don't still try to develop the men, because they are to be the leaders of the church.
Yeah. And it seems like there in Philippi, Paul had this vision of a man calling to him. So he gets there and all these women get saved, but he knows why he's there. He's waiting on the man. And eventually he had to go to prison to see that come to fruition, to see that happen. One thing I'd have to say, though, is with a ministry like this, we've got to be so careful, especially as Americans. American culture is so refreshing. If you live in a third world country and you come back to the States, it's just like, oh man, it's so wonderful to see an American. And it's not because I'm just a patriot. It's just our culture is such an ambitious culture, and you don't even realize it. We mock how lazy people are, but it's really an ambitious culture. So when you come to a place like this, it's very easy for the Americans to come here, the American missionaries, the teams that come to help with things. It's very easy for the Americans to come with their zeal and their ambition and do everything because they can, and because they can do it better than anyone. And the problem with that is that's not sustainable, and it's not reproduced. You can't reproduce yourself unless you reproduce it in someone else.
Right.
So here, I have really had to totally shift all my dreams. Like for the past 12 years that I've been investing into this country, I've had to totally shift all of my dreams and visions for the ministry here, because what I am learning is that I can't do all of the ministry by myself, and I shouldn't do it forever. So what I've got to do is I've got to find a core, and in fact, I don't have to find them. When God puts a man in a place, he puts a man in a place for a purpose. And then God builds a network of men. He builds a group of men around that man that he is supposed to train. And those men become the heartbeat of the church. And sure, they can't do the ministry like the missionary can. They can't do it as efficiently or with as much zeal or drive as a missionary, because no one's taught them.
Right.
So by the grace of God, what we have already started is we have a core group of men that God has put together. I didn't even select them. They were just here, and they're ready, and they're waiting to be trained and discipled. And so God has put these group of men together. And so what we've already done is we are just working together as this group of men and just trying to train and disciple them. And then they can in turn train others and teach others. And God will give them vision to do what I don't even know you can do in Guyana. And it's just a blessing to see God work through them, even more than what I could do as the missionary.
Right. Well, I can say from myself and my family and our church, and I would go so far as to say other churches that support you, we're very excited
Amen.
about the future possibilities if the Lord tarries his coming, what will happen in this country. And I know that you'll be a part of that. And I thank you for spending a few minutes and just sharing your heart a little bit about Guyana and about mentorship. And for those listening, if you want more information, you can go to forgeministry.com. There's a podcast there, and there's information about events. Maybe at some point, the Lord will open the door and we can do a Forge conference here in Guyana.
Yeah.
And to do a men's conference that is centered on mentorship for the ministry and encourage the men to step up and to embrace the ministry, to lift up the arms of their pastor and to find their place in serving the Lord. But Brother Blake, I appreciate your time.
Amen.
Thank you so much for allowing us to enter the dungeon for a few minutes this morning. And Lord willing, we'll do this again sometime.
Amen. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this production of the Forge Ministry Podcast. You can continue the conversation and stay up to date with new releases and conferences by visiting forgeministry.com. In addition, you can receive text alerts by texting the word FORGE, that's FORGE, the word FORGE, to this phone number, 309-316-7240. Join us next time on the Forge Ministry Podcast.